Hi guys, MrRoflWaffles here. This is your full guide to complete the Voyage of Despair main quest Easter egg. Let's jump into it. Before you begin your game, I recommend that you equip yourself, and any of your teammates do the same, with the Scepter of Ra. That thing is extremely useful for this Easter egg. Trust me, it's going to come in handy at several different stages of the quest, and so it's just generally something that's good to have in your creator class. I also think that it's a good idea to have on the classic Gobblegums anywhere but here for getting out of tight situations, and nowhere but there because you can revive people inside boss fights really easily with that, as well as throughout the rest of your game previously as you lead up to the boss fight itself. Perk loadout is really your choice, but I like having Quick Revive on. I think that that's an extremely useful perk in this map, and Time Slip as your modifier perk is also a decent idea because that's going to allow you to charge your special weapon faster. Now, one perk that I think is really smart to put on if you're doing this for the first time is Dying Wish. The reason for that is that when you get to the end of this Easter egg, the boss is going to have a move that it can do that just insta-kills you, and Dying Wish is one of the only things in the entire game that is going to allow you to survive those wipes. When you jump into game, the first things you want to do are as follows. Start opening the map as soon as possible and start spinning the mystery box in the hopes that you get really lucky and you get yourself the Kraken. The Kraken is the wonder weapon on this map. It's got elemental upgrades that we'll be using later on. It's also really good for protecting yourself in sticky situations, in tight corridors and things like that, so it's a great weapon to have, and it's going to be essential for the boss fight later on. Now, the reason we want to get it early is because we want to start upgrading it early, and I'll explain what I mean by that more in just a moment. Now, you don't only have to rely on the box, you can also end up getting a free Kraken from the free Kraken Easter egg, and I have a guide for that on my channel as well, if you want to do that to get a bonus Kraken for a teammate in your game. All 4 players in the game are able to get their own Kraken from the mystery box, but getting a free one just makes it a little bit easier. However, for now, start opening the map and just start spinning the box when you feel like you have surplus points. You want to get the Sentinel artifact as soon as possible, and you get that just in the standard way, running all the way over to the end side of the boat and holding square on the artifact itself. Then, you want to open Pack-a-Punch as soon as possible, and to do that, it's the standard process. I've got a full guide for that on my channel linked in the top right hand corner of the screen or the description right now if you need more details. However, I'm going to assume for now that you know how to open the Pack-a-Punch. Get that done ASAP. As soon as Pack-a-Punch is opened, there are going to be 4 symbols that appear on the map, and they look like they're drawn in chalk or scratched into the surface that they're kind of displayed on, and each of those symbols is going to correspond to a nearby clock. Before I jump into the details of how we're going to do this step, I'm just going to show you all of the spawns for those symbols and their corresponding clocks. The first spawn we're going to look at is in the mail rooms, which opens up once you grab the Sentinel artifact. You'll be able to head down. The symbol is just there under the metal stairs, and the corresponding clock is just along on this side of the wall. Spawn number 2 is up the stairs and into the bridge just in front of the spawn. You'll see that in front of the captain's steering wheel there is 1 clock, and if you back up a bit in the room, on a wooden desk there is a possible symbol spawn. Then, if we go through to the upper grand staircase, there is spawn pair number 3. The clock is going to be in the center of the kind of wall decoration wood thing here, and the symbol is going to be directly above this doorway where I am showing you here. In the first class lounge, also known as the Zeus area, you should see a symbol potentially under the candlestick just here, and the corresponding clock is just around the corner on the mantelpiece. Then if we head down into the galley, you should see another possible symbol spawn corresponding to this clock here on the wall. And finally, we'll be going into the provisions area, up the stairs, past the first metal staircase, and to the second wooden staircase, where we find a symbol just here, and the corresponding clock is on the other side of the wall. Now then, you will have 4 symbols, and therefore 4 relevant clocks in your game. The other clocks in your game will not matter, so just look for the symbols themselves and they will tell you which clocks you need to pay attention to. The terminology I'm going to use to describe this here is up and down triangle for the standard triangle shapes, and up dash and down dash for the triangles that have a strike through them. You need to go around those 4 symbols you found, go to their corresponding clocks, and write down the symbol and the time on the clock. Now, this can already get confusing here, because you don't want to read the clock as if it's a normal clock. It's a little difficult to describe exactly what we're doing, but normally on a clock, if you were seeing the time 2:50, the hour hand would be pretty close to 3. However, the time would still be 2:50. Now for us, in this video, in this guide, we're not going to read the time that way, and if the hour hand is nearly at 3 but just not quite there, we're going to just say that it's actually at 3. So a time that would normally have been 2:50 on a regular analog clock would instead be 3:50 on our in-game clock. So you're writing down all those symbols and their corresponding times. You're then going to want to head back to the bridge. On the bridge, there are 4 sets of levers, and each one has a symbol on it that matches the 4 symbols that you have just found dotted around the map. You need to look at the time you just wrote down, and specifically look at the minutes part of it. Don't look at the hours for now, just look at the minutes. The handles on the levers in this room are specifically going to correspond to the minutes part of the time only. Let's say, for example, you look at your down triangle lever and your time is something with a minutes number of 10. What you need to do is then move your lever arm 2 movements to the right, and that's because 10 is 2 sets of 5 minutes, and the clock, when it's broken into 12, is split up into 5-minute segments. If it was a minutes number of 15, we would go 3 to the right, because then that would be 3 sets of 5 minutes. Similarly, if we had a 45, for example, as the minutes, then we would go 3 to the left, because we would be taking away 15 minutes from the kind of 12 o'clock straight up position. So, seeing as we've just found 4 times around the map, you're going to enter the minutes part of those times into your 4 lever arms on the bridge. But you're then not done. You need to do the same thing again for the hours part of the times on the other side of the boat. There are 2 levers right by where the sentinel artifact is originally picked up, and there are 2 more levers right down in the engine room, the water from which you can drain if you so desire. Now, on the other side of the boat, when you're trying to do those hours parts of the times, you'll notice that there are no symbols on the lever arms. You can't see any triangles on there, and so you need to just remember the fact, and I'm going to have this on screen right now, that at the point where you pick up the sentinel artifact, of the 2 levers there, the one on the left corresponds to up dash, and the one on the right corresponds to down dash. So you need the hour parts of the times from up dash and down dash, and you're going to put them onto those levers respectively. Then we're going to do the same thing below decks in the engine room, and these ones also correspond to our old symbols. On the left here, we have up triangle, and on the right here, we have down triangle. Now note that there are 4 levers, but only 2 of them work, so just test which ones work in your game, and then do the left one being up triangle, and the right one being down triangle. To verify that this is working as it should do, you can go back to the bridge and there'll be a little gold hand on each lever that indicates the hour hand and is set by all the stuff that you were doing back on the other side of the boat. It isn't affected by the main lever on that particular lever arm in the bridge. This way, if you're stuck on this, you can read the entire time from just a single thing instead of having to run all the way back across the map. I also want to quickly note that the leftmost lever arm in the bridge is set from the right-hand side, whereas all the others are set from their left-hand side. I've just got to make that clear. Don't get confused about it. Don't invert your times or anything like that. Just do it normally, but set the leftmost one from the right-hand side and all the others from the left. Once you have fully entered your times, you will hear a sound cue that sounds something like this. And you will then be ready to start the electrical outlet step. For this, we're going to be running around the map again, looking at some spawns to begin with, and then I'll explain how this step is going to work. The first spawn I'm going to be showing you is just through these doors here in the state rooms. You go on the left-hand side, and there is a power outlet or wall plug socket just on the left there. Another possible spawn is up at the top of the upper grand staircase. Come to this side, and you should see the outlet just there. Another possible spawn will be in the first class lounge. This is the same area that has the Zeus perk machine, and just on the side of this wooden beam type thing here, you'll have another possible spawn. Then going down a floor to the dining hall with the Ra perk machine, there's another possible spawn just here, and you can see it's actually lit up there in my game. If you then come to the backside of the ship and head on to the aft decks, behind a rebuildable barrier, you can see another possible outlet spawn. And then finally, going all the way to the back of the boat into the third class berths, there's another spawn just down here by the staircase. So now that you know all those locations, I can kind of explain what's actually going on. Basically, in your game, 4 of those outlets that I just showed you are going to all be sparking once you complete the previous step of the egg. And they'll be sparking with different elemental colors. Those colors will be gas, water, electric, and fire. And each one has a matching special catalyst zombie on the map. You need to locate your 4 elemental power outlets and then bring the correct special zombie to each outlet and kill it in front of the outlet to create a teleporter pad on the floor. However, there are definitely some quirks to this step. You can only create 1 teleporter pad per round. That's the orange symbol on the floor that you get once you have actually killed one of the special zombies near the correct outlet. Once you've created one in 1 round, you'll just want to flip over to the next round and then get a different special zombie and do a different outlet and create a different portal. You can then also, if you so desire, actually enter the portals that you're creating each round that you make them, or you can save them all up for later in your game and do them all at the same time at a later round if you so desire. It's just the creation of the portal pad in the first place that has to be spaced out on a different round each time. The portals themselves need to be activated in a specific elemental order. That order is gas, water, electricity, fire. So if you don't get any gas zombies, you won't be able to make the portal right next to the gas outlet, and you therefore won't be able to do any of the challenges until you do eventually get a gas zombie and are able to make your portal. Now, the portals themselves take you to little mini lockdown events in which you have to kill a load of zombies and typically a couple of Blightfathers and a bunch of Stokers as well. The first challenge, the gas one, is not too bad, and the game gives you a max ammo, so you won't need to worry too much about it. You should be able to jump into it pretty early in your game and still complete it if you've got some reasonable firepower and you use your specialist weapons. To teleport, run over to the pad, and if you've got a team, have them all come as well and hold square on top of it. It should light up while you're standing on it, by the way. When you're done with the challenge, you'll get teleported back to the kind of real world of the map, and a white sentinel artifact will appear that you need to pick up before you are able to activate any other challenge portals. The second challenge is the water one, and this one is really quite difficult. I recommend that prior to doing this, you make sure that you have drained the water in the cargo hold, just because the water is going to fill up in the cargo hold through this step, and if it starts off drained, it just makes it a little easier to get some kills from the beginning of the challenge. You're going to be stuck in the cargo hold as the water rises, and Blightfathers are going to spawn down there, and so for this one, I typically don't suggest to my team that we start it until we have either krakens in our game, or we've got people with the homunculus, that's the monkey bomb on this map, or we for some reason have serious firepower with Pack-a-Punch guns and things along those lines. This is just a little bit of a difficult challenge. Note that this challenge won't give you a max ammo. When you successfully complete it, you should see that a white sentinel artifact just floats down and you need to grab it again before you can do the next challenge. We're now going to basically rinse and repeat for the electricity and the fire challenges. The third challenge reverts back and now does give you a max ammo again, which is nice, and is fairly straightforward as well. This one's not too difficult. And then the fourth one can be a little bit worrying because you go right down into the turbine room of the map and you're in a very confined area, but what I recommend you do is run up the slope here and get onto the catwalk so you can hold down each side with your teammates and take out all the stokers that are inevitably going to run at you. Monkeys are really useful for this one as well. Once you finish this fourth and final challenge, run back down the slope once you spawn back into the map, and you should see a gold sentinel artifact to pick up. If you see this and you grab it by holding square, you know that you're ready to move on with the Easter egg. We're now at the point where we need that elemental kraken that I mentioned earlier in the video. I have a full guide on how exactly you upgrade the kraken itself linked in the description down below, and in the top right hand corner of the screen right now, just click the card and it will link you straight to it. However, for now, I'll just give you some brief pointers. Obviously, you need your 3 buildables parts in order to actually craft the elemental kraken. You're specifically, for this Easter egg step, looking for the concentrated decay. That's from gas zombies or acid zombies or decay zombies, whatever you want to call them. They're basically going to drop like an acidic kind of moldy heart, and that's the item that you're going to need to use to upgrade your kraken, because if we have a fire, water, or electricity one, this step is just not going to work. It's one of the reasons that I said you should start hitting the box as early as possible in your game, because you want the kraken really early on, so you can start already getting kills on those gas zombies with the kraken to try and get the heart so you can do the upgrade. Remember as well that the elemental upgrade itself is going to cost you 3,000 points. With your elemental decay kraken, come to this room and start shooting all of these blue pipes that I'm shooting in this gameplay here. There are 9 of them in total, although they won't always be necessary for the step, but you may well end up shooting all of them anyway. Now, we're not just shooting the pipes themselves, but there's actually leaks coming from the pipes in the form of steam, and we're going to cause that steam to turn into a water spring. So when you have successfully shot one of the patches of steam on the blue pipes, you should see that there'll be little drips of water flying out instead of just the steam effect, and then you can move on to the next pipe. It can be a little difficult to hit them sometimes, and some of them are in really dark corners, so look under the walkways in that room. They'll all be in that room with you. Look directly up at the ceiling, try to look at the ceiling from various different angles, that sort of thing, and you should be able to spot all 9 blue steaming pipe leaks. Once they've all been converted into water leaks, the room will begin to flood with water. Once it's flooded, you're going to want to check if the Pack-a-Punch is already in that room with you. If it is, fantastic, because we're going to be Pack-a-Punching the Sentinel artifact as the next step. However, if the Pack-a-Punch isn't there, you're going to need to go to the next round and move the Pap until you have it spawn in that room, and that's when you'll be able to Pack-a-Punch the Sentinel artifact. When you're doing this, it should just give you a little hint string saying, hold square to Pap the Sentinel artifact, so you don't need to do anything special to actually put it in the machine. With the artifact Pack-a-Punched, there will now be 9 symbols on the map that you need to run around and hold square on. I'm going to run through all the locations now, and while you don't need to write anything down here, I do highly recommend that you get familiar with where all of these spawns are, because it's going to be essential knowledge in the next step of this Easter egg. So, here are the 9 spawns. The first one's in the bridge, it's just on this kind of wooden cabinet here. Then if we zoom down the metal stairs here towards the spawn area of the map, there's an area called the forecastle, that's this elevated bit up here, and there's a second symbol just there, the circular one. Then we're going to zoom down into the mail rooms, and there is a third symbol just on the wall here on this kind of crevice. Then we're going to zoom back up and into the state rooms. That's what this area of the map is called. Go left at the Mog and go into this room, and behind the plant, you can see another spawn. Then, if we zoom through into the millionaire suites, which are down here, you can see another one under that table. Then if we go up the stairs here into the lower grand central staircase, we can see another symbol just there. Going up the staircase a little more, I nearly messed up there. We can go onto the aft deck if we go through the mid deck here, and on the aft deck, there is another spawn inside a life preserver or a life ring, or whatever you want to call it. Then zooming through even further through the map, we can go down into the engine room, and in engine room there is going to be a spawn on the floor just outside the Odin perk machine. So we're going to take a right here, and right on the floor in front of Odin, you should see that one quite clearly. And then the last one, if you're coming again in the room from that same entrance, is going to, instead of just going to the Odin perk, take a right at it, and it's going to be just here. But this one's unique in that you have to lie down in order to activate it. If you have subtitles on, each time you activate one of the symbols, it will say the name of an element, like copper or uranium or etc, etc. Now, the reason that I said that all these locations are so important is that this next step is going to require us, and I know this sounds wacky, but it's going to require us to shoot all of the planets in the solar system out of the sky, and we're going to collect them in the 9 locations that we have just been looking at. On screen right now is a compilation of all of the planets which correspond to all of the areas that we have just looked at, and it will become clear in just a moment how this all pieces together. Once all 9 symbols have been held square on and activated, you can go down into the cargo hold, and you should see a crate in there which has burst open or something, and inside is a model of the solar system. Don't do it just yet, make sure you've got your bearings first, but when you hold square on it, it's going to light up a sequence of planets, and you need to write that sequence down, or memorize it, or record it somehow, just from seeing it blink through its little order. Now you'll notice that there's actually an order to the way this little device has been constructed. The closest planet to the sun, Mercury, is right at the top. And then as you go down, the planets get further and further away from the sun, ending at Neptune. Pluto is not a planet. So you've got Mercury, this kind of dull purplish one. Venus, this burned orange one. Earth, that's obviously us. And we have our moon, which we can see in our sky. Mars, which is the kind of bright red one. Jupiter, which is a gas giant, and it's a big orangey browny one. Saturn, which is kind of iconic because it's yellow and it's got those rings, it's huge as well. Uranus, which is a kind of slightly larger and pinky colored one. And then Neptune, which is blue and is really far out. Watch the order blink through its sequence, and then it will always end with the sun. Now we have an order of planets that we need to shoot. All we need to do is go upstairs from where we were in the cargo hold and look in the sky. And you'll see that that same celestial layout of all the planets are up there, ready to be shot. And the sun is even included in the center there. It doesn't matter that it's nighttime in the map and you can see the moon really clearly. The sun is up there in the center as well. You can figure out which planet is which in the sky from their colors and their proximity to the sun. You'll be able to see that some planets are very close to the sun. For example, Mercury and Venus are always going to be really near it. However, other planets like Neptune are very far away. In fact, Neptune is always skirting along the horizon on the map. And what that means is that you need to look for it dipping in and out of the water away from the boat, as opposed to being actually inside the sky itself. Now, don't do this just yet, because you're going to basically be on a challenge round now where you might not be earning any points from getting kills. You definitely don't want to mess this step up and have to go a new round because you're probably quite late in your game. It's all getting pretty tense. And this step and onwards can also be a cause of blue screens. When you know which of your planets is first, you need to look at the guide reference that I've got on the screen right now and see which location it corresponds to. This is definitely most easily done in a co-op game, but it's definitely possible in solo too. You just need to shoot the planet which is the first in your sequence, and it will then become a blue orb, and it will fly down and crash into the symbol location that I showed you previously inside the map locations that I'm matching on screen to the planets right now. So Saturn, for example, is always going to drop in the bridge. The moon is always going to drop where that crescent moon symbol was on the lower grand staircase level. Now, when you shoot a planet, it's going to despawn zombies, and they are going to respawn and basically run towards you and the orb itself. And so what you ideally need to do is time it so that you can shoot the planet and then arrive at the location where it will land as soon as it gets there. You don't want to leave it there for long at all. You do have a 30-second timer to actually grab it, but in my experience, there's a lot of instances that I've had in my games where I've been shooting with splash damage and the zombies have been attacking the orb and it's disappeared for one reason or another that I haven't been able to figure out. You obviously want to avoid that in your game. You also want to avoid getting swarmed while you're grabbing it, and so I recommend you trying to time this one quite well. Communication with your teammates here is key. If you're in solo, communication with your monkey bombs is probably a better bet. If you first activate the planet sequence right at the beginning and you miss the order, you should be able to reactivate it once, and you'll be able to reactivate it the next round as well. Also, if you fail this step in any way, so for example, if you shoot the wrong planet, or you fail to collect your planet in time, or it disappears for an unknown reason, or whatever might happen, you just fail the step, you'll be able to go into it the next round instead, and you'll have to go back from the beginning. The only celestial body in the sequence that is unique here is the sun. And the reason it's unique is that, well, okay, it's not a planet, but neither's the moon, but also, the sun cannot just be picked up by one person, whereas all the others can. Instead, for the sun, you need to meet it as a team at the forecastle. And when you do so, and you all hold square together, you'll be teleported into a further time trial sequence. Now, again, this is why I wanted to be so clear with you guys, to not jump headfirst into this until you really knew what was going on. Thankfully, you can kind of take breaks between planets. You don't have to shoot all the planets in one massive long go. You're going to do one, you're going to collect it, then you're going to decide when you want to shoot the next, you're going to collect it, etc. That is not timed, but because the step is so easy to mess up, it's worth taking extra care. When you do eventually get to the sun and you all hold square and activate it together, you'll be teleported to this time trial like I've just mentioned, and the way it's going to work is that there'll be ice blocks in your path, and you're going to need to break them using your krakens, other weapons, and especially the laser beam on your scepter of Ra. That thing is amazing for this, and you basically need to fight and melt your way all the way through to the other end of the ship, where there'll be one last big block of ice waiting for you, which you need to break, and you'll then have completed the step, and there'll be a teleporter pad on the floor afterwards, which will take you to the boss fight when you choose. Now, I think the absolute best way to do this is to make sure that when you decide to shoot the sun, and bring it down and then hold square on it together with your team, you have at least one Scepter of Ra in your party, whether it's you in a solo game, or multiple of you and your friends in a team. You're going to want to have someone pop the Scepter of Ra straight away and start melting those ice blocks on whatever route you decide to take. The others should be covering them and making sure they are safe, but not spamming too much probably because you don't want to accidentally blue screen your game here. You're going to get a max ammo midway through this, so bear that in mind, and there are one or two ice blocks a little later on, just before you get to the poop deck kind of area, which can be a little tricky because it gets so tight, so beware for those. At this point in the game, you're kind of expected to have multiple krakens if you're in a co-op game, and probably multiple people with monkeys as well, and all those sorts of bells and whistles, your perks, etc. ready to go, and so they do turn the difficulty up a little bit here, but you should be okay as long as you're prepared. And remember, you're timed. You're going to eventually freeze if you don't run fast enough, and if you freeze, you're going to have to repeat this entire step. Assuming you don't freeze though, and you get through, you break that final ice block right at the end of the boat, and you unlock the boss fight portal, you're then able to go whenever you want. Now, a couple of words of advice before you go to the boss fight, because it's really, really important that you don't run into that one without having thought about it a bit first. The boss itself has 5 stages, and the first couple are completely fine. You should be able to get through them without a crazy huge amount of difficulty, certainly relative to the final stage. Now, in the final stage, the boss has a wipe mechanic, which means that he has a way of killing your entire team all at once if you don't interrupt him and prevent him from doing so. The community's tests so far have seemed to suggest that the Kraken, upgraded but not elemental, is one of the best things to use in that interrupt sequence. Obviously, upgraded guns that are quad repacked are also a very good shout too, but the upgraded non-elemental Kraken is currently a community favorite. The problem with the elemental Kraken upgrades is that they don't actually really go far enough in order to damage the boss a lot of the time, and so You have to get the decay upgrade, obviously, for the Easter egg, but if your friends are also getting their own krakens, consider having them not get an elemental upgrade on it and just keep it as a big old cannon. Another important point to consider is that, yes, you had to have the decay upgrade on your kraken for the earlier step in the Easter egg, but there's no reason why you couldn't A, trade it out and then get a new kraken and start again, or B, and this is what I really would recommend as being a preferable option, get an ice upgrade for it, that's the concentrated purity, instead of your decay. The ice upgrade for the kraken, in my opinion, is fantastic. It shoots the cannon and leaves a kind of swirly mist that slows zombies down, and it's great for killing stokers too. It's also fantastic for keeping your team alive while they shoot the boss, and they'll probably be using their bullet weapons while you are using this AoE to make sure they're not taking any damage. An important point to note is that at the end of the boss fight, there's only going to be a KN-57 available on the wall to buy, and you might need extra ammo, so consider the KN being your second gun from your Kraken in your run. Obviously, if it's quadruple packed, that's definitely going to be a benefit for your team. Anyway, that's enough kind of prerequisite stuff. Obviously, get a shield, guys, and stuff like that. But once you're all perked up and ready to go, everyone needs to go over to the portal and hold square on it. You'll then teleport to the boss fight. But there'll be a little sequence first where you need to swim forward here towards this tree and hold square together again. Now the boss fight begins. It will start off and you'll be shown the boss. And for this stage, you just need to kill ads. Those are the extra zombies that aren't the main boss, but are still just roaming around, making your life difficult. Kill as many of them as you can as fast as possible, and you'll end up getting Stokers and Blightfathers spawning as well. You just need to take them out and try and get used to the kind of chaos of your entire team running around in one place like this and messing up each other's hordes, etc. An important point to note is that you'll get a max ammo and a carpenter as soon as you arrive here. The carpenter obviously refills your shield, unless it's broken, and the max ammo gives you a max ammo. Now, that will be there for the entire duration of this first stage, and when you get to the end of the stage, your screen kind of color will lose the boss fight filter on it for about 10 seconds, and you'll have a very small window of time to grab the max ammo if you haven't already grabbed it, and therefore have full ammo going into stage 2. Each stage is going to give you a max ammo and a carpenter like this, and so you want to be trying to be smart about how you conserve your ammo and save the maxes and carpenters while not losing your shield and not running out of ammo and then dying because you were trying to be kind of too greedy with your ammo. Once you've killed enough of the regular zombies and the Blightfathers and the Stokers, etc., you'll be teleported to phase 2. This one is significantly more tight, but that doesn't mean it's not manageable. You just need to try and spread your team out smartly in the playable space. You can definitely have people running around on the ground floor while someone is staying up at the sort of top end of these stairs here and trying to do their best not to get in the way of their teammates while also keeping themselves covered and covering their team wherever possible. You need to be very communicative for this one because Stokers will just zoom in and suddenly appear, and you'll get multiple Blightfathers as well, which can be quite difficult in this particular tight, narrow space. Stage 2 is the same as stage 1 in that it's just killing ads, that's all you've got to do. You don't need to worry about the boss too much. It's actually stage 3 though, where that changes. Here, you are in a very narrow space in the staterooms, and the boss will, at the beginning of the stage, fire its beam down each corridor to just give you an idea of how exactly its mechanic with its eyeball is going to work. The way the boss takes damage is that when it's firing its eyeball laser beam, it's exposed and you can hit marker it. And so you need to see it firing that beam and have a teammate cover you ideally or throw a monkey and then plow into it with as much damage as you can. Now remember, your elemental upgrades here are not going to damage the boss at all. They're just not. So you can use those for AoE crowd control while your team shoot the boss, but if you're shooting the boss, you probably want to be using a bullet-based weapon. The third stage doesn't last too long. Make sure that you're being mindful about your gobblegum usage, your specialist weapons as well. Those things can come in absolutely clutch. I also recommend that, assuming you have it at level 3 at this point in your game, you plant your staff down if anything gets extra crazy, because you'll then be able to revive yourself and the rest of your team even if all of you go down, as long as one person can crawl into the radius of your bubble shield. So in summary for this one, just whenever the boss is shooting down the corridors, peek out around the middle and shoot into its eyeball. You should get hit markers on it. That'll indicate that you're actually doing damage, and eventually the stage will end. You'll be cleared out of there and put into stage 4. Stage 4 is one of the ones that I'd say is not too bad. This again is going to be a case of shooting the boss inside its pupil while it's shooting you. And you'll basically get hit markers when that's happening, but then you'll also get an indicator that you're doing good damage to it when its eye cracks and goes red. That's a sign that you're actually hurting the boss and you're doing well. Now here again, our kind of strategy in this particular gameplay was for me to cover my teammate because I had that frost upgrade on the Kraken and he had a massive LMG that he could just lay into the boss with, and that seemed to be really effective. There were also a couple of times when there weren't actually many zombies left around while the boss was shooting, and so it was the perfect opportunity for me to shoot into the boss with my Titan as well. Beware Stokers and Blightfathers here once again, because regular zombies are just not an issue, but those guys, especially the Blightfathers, can absolutely mess your run up. I mean, both of them, Stokers and Blightfathers, can do 100 damage melee attacks, and you don't want to be caught on the end of one of those, so be careful. Once you're done, grab your max ammo and your carpenter if you haven't already, and then you'll be flung into stage 5. This is where the wipe mechanic applies, so please be careful here. The way it's going to work is that the boss is going to teleport around the sides of the arena. There are going to be a bunch of zombies, loads of Blightfathers, loads of Stokers. It's going to be chaos. And you need to, again, wait for the boss to be shooting with his beam before you start spraying into him with your bullet weapons, preferably. You should be able to make use of the terrain here, especially the ramp up to the elevated area where you picked up the sentinel artifact at the beginning of your game, and then the drop down on the left or the right hand side to get some good angles on the boss and evade the zombies as well. And once you do enough damage, you will trigger a scream from the boss that you should hear, and your character might say something as well, and the wipe mechanic will initiate. As soon as you hear that scream and you see the boss teleport and start to sort of charge up, you need to start shooting into it like crazy. It's exceedingly important here to stun it out of its animation, otherwise it will kill everybody on your team. Like I said at the very beginning of the video, if you've got Dying Wish available, that will save you here, but it's not going to save you more than once. It's Dying Wish after all, it only really works once in a boss fight. So, because you've got to go through multiple wipe mechanics in order to actually beat the boss, you're going to need to get good at shooting it as soon as it starts screaming and interrupting it pretty damn quickly. Remember what I said a little earlier as well. Use that regular upgraded Kraken without the elemental effects while it's in the wipe mechanic in order to stun it and stop it from killing you all. That's a really good weapon for it. You can also use things like this Titan LMG that I'm using right here. Seems to have done an effective job. You're going to essentially have to go in circles here several times, and it's going to be very similar to the previous stage in that the eyeball will go red and kind of shattered when you're doing damage to it, and that's an indicator that you're doing well and you've nearly killed the boss. Eventually, after you've gone through enough cycles of this wipe mechanic, you interrupting it, the boss being unhappy, and then you killing a load of ads and trying to get shots on it again, it's going to do one final charge up, which you need to just spray into like crazy, and then when you successfully interrupt it, that will actually be the end of the boss. You'll have completed the Easter egg, and you'll be into the cutscene pretty much straight away. If that is the case for you, then congratulations. You made it, the trophy is all yours, and I'm hopeful that you've had fun in the process as well. I've tried to make this guide as comprehensive and clear as possible, as I do with all of my no-nonsense guides. And if you want to see more guides like this on YouTube, then all you've got to do is subscribe, turn on notifications, and click on the like button. I'll have links on screen right now to guides that I have for 9, Classified, and Blood of the Dead. For now though, I've just got to say thank you for watching, and I'll see you all very soon hopefully in more Black Ops 4 Zombies videos. Bye for now.